Hello, everybody. Let's have a mystical conversation, the kind where we lose ourselves in the wonders of divine mysteries, share dreams from the other side, intuitive nudgings, and soul mission yearnings. I'm Rev Sue Frederick, a Unity minister, master numerologist, and author of several books, including the Angel Up book series, the newly revised Sacred Numerology Workbook, and my newest book, Angels and Numbers, the Sacred Language of Divine Guidance, all available on Amazon to help you find your purpose and receive angelic guidance along the way. Our guest today for this mystical conversation is somebody I have been friends with and known since around 2010, a long time ago. And I used to be on her amazing radio show. And she's been a renowned energy healer for decades. Her name is Marie Manuchehri, and she's a powerful intuitive healer and medium. She began her healing career while working as an oncology nurse in a Seattle area hospital. Her unique perceptions and ability to move energy have assisted many in healing their bodies. She's devoted to teaching people about the real positive impact their own psychic abilities can have on transforming their lives and their psychology, as well as the lives of others. Marie loves to educate those who are also on the healer's path. She teaches many courses focused on intuition and the awareness of energy. These courses provide tools on how to recognize and understand one's intuition and how to provide new perceptions for those seeking healing. This allows for significant subatomic movement and a positive flow of energy, leading to the reversal of illness and lasting health. In her private practice, Marie cares for clients around the world by providing effective insights into their health issues as well as mediumship to help them connect with loved ones on the other side. She has a bi-monthly live podcast, the Joyful Intuitive Podcast, and she's the author of Intuitive Self-Healing and How to Communicate with Your Spirit Guides. Welcome, Marie. So, Marie, I am so happy to be with you because we go so far back. I think like 2010, I was on your show or something.
I know it's amazing. I'm so happy I get to hang out with you. And you look phenomenal, by the
Well,
way.
you always look phenomenal. So, would you go back to your beginning as an oncology nurse and how you started to recognize that you could run energy and affect patients with energy? This is a great story. So, take it away, Marie.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, I was a nurse and I got my first hospital job. I'd worked in some other facilities prior. And I actually had some weird stuff happen to me. I was working graveyard, 3 days a week, 12-hour shifts, and I started having tachycardia. And I went to the one of the cardiologists finally, and he had me wear a device for a week that checked my heart rate. And he said it was my biorhythms. I had to have an echo and all kinds of stuff. And I had to move to day shift. And the only opening in the entire hospital was the oncology floor. And I was raised very holistic. So that wasn't like my desired spot in the hospital, but because of I wasn't getting enough rest. I had to go to day shift. I ended up loving the oncology floor. I miss the hospital every day still, and it's been since 2000 that I left. And after working a little while on the onc floor, I began to have these experiences where I began to hear, see, and feel inside my patients' bodies, and their organs were telling me why they were really sick. And I was raised very spiritually, so I wasn't afraid. I was very curious. I had had some profound experiences during my life, but not every single day like I was having in the hospital. And the very first time I was at the bedside of a woman, I think I was changing her IV. And hospitals are busy and loud, and and all of a sudden the room got pretty quiet, and it was as if my eyes had X-ray vision, and they went through the blanket, and I could see the blanket and even the fibers as I was moving through. And when I exited the blanket and entered her gown and quickly went through that thin garment, and on her skin, I was kind of like, for a moment, my vision kind of just laid there, just on her skin, and just in kind of a surprise but delight. And then I went deeper, as if I was just meant to sink into her body. And all of a sudden I was in her liver. And I knew I was in the liver because I'd had anatomy and physiology. And the liver just started talking to me. I think the body wants so deeply for us to hear it. And it has so much to share. And it told me that this person had a lot of repressed anger. And that's what had led to their disease process. It also told me that this person had not had therapy, would not be interested in therapy, and that really they were in the best place for them under the circumstances, receiving the best medicine for them. Because even if you've had therapy, sometimes chemotherapy is the right decision and the right choice. So I got this wealth of information. And I was also told, but you could surround her in beautiful light and cherish the decisions she's making, and encourage her on an energetic level to release every time you walk in the room. So that was my very first experience.
So this is so great. I have some questions. You really describe seeing it all. So for you, is this kind of energy work really a clairvoyant experience where you're seeing the organs but then you also described hearing from, who is it, the angels? Who's telling you these things when
I
you're
would say
having,
God talks to me, but God is in everything.
right?
But I feel very connected to creation source. I always feel like go to the big guy or the
Yeah.
big goddess or the big star in the sky or
Yeah.
however you want to interpret it. And really sitting next to you is helping me to remember in detail how I went, you know, how it was such a full, beautiful experience. And
Yeah.
so, yes, my clairvoyance is the strongest gift that I have. I'm very, very visual. But I'm also auditory and clairsentient. And I have the knowingness, all psychics, we don't really care how the information comes to us. We
Right.
just want to know.
So I just love this story. How did you then go from there to, I'm going to quit my job and just do energy healing?
Right? So I was pretty delighted and surprised by the experience. And every day that I went into the hospital, not when I wasn't in the hospital, but in the hospital, it was a transformative place for me. I would have another psychic experience, and they just kept adding up and adding up. And I was learning every single day. I felt like I was in some master class, and I wanted to be in there. I didn't want to go home. But I eventually told my nurse supervisor what was happening because I was a charge nurse most days. And I was worried that someone would code on the floor and I would be distracted by someone's prostate gland or their brain, and that I wouldn't respond appropriately. And I had a personal rule that nobody coded on my watch, that someone would be taken to the ICU unit, or we would change their code status, or tend to them appropriately in a timely manner. So when I told her, I thought she would suspend me, is what I thought would happen, but that's not what happened. She said, I'm seeing energy and I need to begin laying hands on our patients. And she surprised me so much. And later, because I interviewed her when I had a radio show a few times, as I'm walking out of her office, I now see this big angel framed behind her desk and this beautiful fountain on her desk. And when I would have walked into her office many times before, I was usually at some need that I had for a patient that I was, um, you know, trying to help them in some capacity. And I wasn't looking at her surroundings. So I started laying hands on patients. I trained myself about a year and a half, 2 years in the hospital. And then people just started showing up at my door. That's really how it happened.
I
I
love
had
that.
been, right, I had been fortunate enough that some supervisors would call me in on my day off if we had staff members in house, and they would pay me time and a half to come in and lay hands on them. And because right away the staff noticed that patients would get calm, their pain would go away, they would sleep through the night, they could get discharged the next day. There would be some major shifts. But yeah, somebody, excuse me, somebody knocked on my door and said they wanted healing. And I didn't have a massage table or anything. I invited them in. My mother told them about me. And, and she didn't
Good
tell
old mothers, right?
my mother was a therapist. And so she gave this person my address, and they laid on the couch, and I did energy work. And so I did energy work for no charge for about 6 months in my home by people just coming over by word of mouth. A neighbor had a serious health issue and landed on my couch. And then I convinced my former husband, who was very frugal, to buy me all this massage stuff for the weight room that was no longer going to be the weight room. And he didn't want to, but one of his friends came over while I was negotiating with him. I was very submissive at that time. And I was negotiating with him, and he wasn't really buying it. And his friend came over and talked him into it. And a few months later, his friend was diagnosed with a brain tumor, a benign one, but it was not well placed. They didn't know if they would get it all, and it was growing. And I worked on him for about a month before his surgery, and got to work on him post-operatively in the ICU unit right after his surgery.
Wow.
And
This
he
is
had a,
so great, Marie, because you really describe the opening of your gift before the world had energy healers everywhere you look. Really, you were on that cusp of the beginning of us recognizing that we can move energy and heal and help people this way. Of course, going way back in history, there were many people like Jesus Christ who understood how to do this.
walked around the planet just lightly grazing his hand on individuals, and they would instantly heal from everything. Yeah.
That's right. So, you also talk about in your work connecting to departed loved ones. So tell me about that process and when did that start and how do you incorporate that now into your work?
Thank you for asking. Again, in the hospital, I was still a nurse. I was working part time at home. I'd started a small business by then, and I was on my way working, pro bono, not pro bono, excuse me, working on call, and then eventually going full time. So I was pretty busy. I had 3 kids at home. I was also on my way out to ending my marriage, which I wasn't totally aware of at that time. And it's early in the morning on the oncology floor, and I'm, getting things ready for the nurses that are coming on. And I see in my peripheral vision this beautiful blue fabric floating above my head. And the hospital had very high ceilings. And I could see a woman's head kind of contort through the fabric and look at me. And she told me mental telepathically that I needed to talk to her son. I just assumed she had passed. I didn't really know. I had a knowingness. And I didn't know what room he was in. It was a very big unit because we had also telemetry and medicine at one point. So it was very big. And I just kind of looked at her like, and I walked away. And she kept talking to me. Every time I passed that part of the hallway, she would yell louder and louder. And finally, towards the end of my shift, his door started to glow. And I knew that's where he was. And I went in there and introduced myself and asked him if his mother had passed. And he said yes. And I said, do you think that she was kind of forceful? And he and his sister, who was sitting next to him, burst out laughing and said, yes, our mother was a very determined person. So I asked him if I could lay hands on him, and I could hear her. And she told me that he was going to go home. I didn't know at that before that time, but he had a very serious illness. He had pancreatic cancer. He was young, and it's very difficult to treat. It's a very high mortality rate. And she wanted him to know that he was going home because he thought maybe he was going to die during that hospitalization or pass over. And she wanted him to know. And so I told him that he still had time and that he will be going home, and that when he does leave, he'll be hanging out with his mom.
One of the things you said in that story that I loved is that his door began to glow. And I think I've talked about this in other videos, but when I went through a cancer experience a couple years ago, I was asking the angels to show me the way through it and, pick the right surgeon for me and show me all the right choices because you're faced with so many choices. And the surgeon, I interviewed surgeons, but the one who was meant to do it walked in the room and I saw her glowing. And I knew she was my angel, and it was a miraculous surgery. Do you think that the vibration or the frequency of things glowing is something that everyone can access, or how do you see that?
Absolutely. And a vibration is where we are and where we're going collectively in terms of consciousness. And there's a right fit about everything from hiring an accountant to a physician to buying your next car, where you're going to live, where to invest your resources, what to do for a living. And you have to have patience. Like I can tell that you trusted the universe during that time, even though I'm sure that everybody's trying to make you make decisions very quickly as they
You're
do. And
exactly right. I mean, boy, the surgeons were parading through my room and saying, "Let's do it Tuesday," and it was Saturday. I was like, "No, no, no. This has to
yes,
feel right."
right. And so if people could learn to do that, learn to wait, like even though, I was feeling bad that I wasn't following that woman's dire need, for me to pass on to a message to her son. I had other things I had to do in the physical realm, and I wasn't really fully present to be able to communicate with her and to pass on the messages. And so I was waiting, and that's I think the most important part, or when it comes to spirituality and consciousness, and us as healers that we are. And beings who have some awareness, we know that we've learned that you have to wait. In fact, I think rest is so critical and important for the human body and allows our consciousness to become present
Yeah.
so that we can see it or hear it or feel it. But congratulations, that must have been an amazing experience for you. And you probably felt so good.
It was so healing for me. I mean, it's crazy to say cancer was a healing experience, but it was because it was healing my trauma from my 30s when my husband Paul died of cancer in my arms and my best girlfriend died of cancer a couple years later. So I had a lot of cancer trauma stuff. And when I was decades later diagnosed with cancer, I knew that I was at a fork in the road and I had to pick the light, the angel way through it, that I couldn't look at it through the human lens or I would go down the rabbit hole of fear. And once I requested help from the angels to see it only through that soul's understanding, everything shifted. And it was an extraordinary journey for me. And I was ready to die if that was my purpose. I wasn't terrified of dying. I just needed to get through it with the light, the angels, and understanding. It feels when you talk about healing that what you're saying is you bring that frequency shift to people and let them walk through it with you, lift them into that light, that wisdom, that understanding, so they can have that miraculous experience no matter what's going to happen. Would you say that's true?
That's true. Even whatever they choose, because I may have a completely different perception. I once had a client come in, a young man who had been diagnosed with, and I don't know, I don't want to know about my clients prior to from them seeing me, because I'm a much better intuitive cold, and they've already seen professionals most likely and have already been diagnosed or have, symptoms or whatnot. And as I was laying hands on him, his colon talked to me and said that it had cancer, but it was encapsulated. And when they sectioned it out, they removed all of it and he didn't need chemotherapy. And so I was explaining,
Marie, that's exactly what happened to me. I can't believe you're telling
oh,
this story.
wow,
You are
that's,
so intuitive. Oh my God.
that's why they want me to tell this story, because this
Yes.
happened a while ago. And
Yes.
his wife was in the room and he was debating chemotherapy. His wife didn't want him to have chemotherapy. I had just said, you don't need it, but he chose to have it. He was very scared. And so my job was to then surround him with light, because it was a long process. He had to go into the hospital for long periods of time. It was a very kind of a crazy form of cancer, and he was young. And he had some really cool experiences too while he was hospitalized. So yeah, I think as a healer, at least for me, my job is to support whatever choices people make. I will give my recommendations, and those who follow them have had amazing results. And those who haven't followed them have also had amazing results. So yes,
So
that's
great. You're really talking about that shifting of the frequency. So I want to ask you about that. Um, you say that the principles of vibration and frequency relate to our ability to manifest and create individualized realities on Earth. Explain that. What does that mean?
well, and you know what I'm talking about. It means that everything is alive with energy. There's trillions of subatomic particles. We probably don't even know all the names of the particle mass that exist. Our human science is somewhat limited at this point in terms of that. And everything vibrates. And so when it vibrates at a high movement, which means a rapid, light, beautiful movement, if we stay there, it will create a frequency where it maintains that vibration for long periods of time. A lot of people think negatively and are very self-critical and unkind to themselves and don't feel good about themselves. So their subatomic particles tend to vibrate in a lower area, slower vibration, and then they hold that type of frequency. So depending where you consistently move your subatomic particles is how you manifest and create your reality. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. It doesn't matter how the world is functioning. You could live in one of the poorest countries in the world, and if you run your vibration in an elevated space with a frequency that stays in that way most of the time or often, you will be comfortable. You'll have enough food. You'll have enough resources. Your body heals like how yours healed so beautifully. Like the universe just encapsulated that tumor. And then when they sectioned it out or whatever they did to your body, you didn't need more treatment, which is
I
amazing.
know it was a miraculous experience, but as we talk about this, I'm also very aware, for example, you and I understand vibration and frequency, but we also know this is the earth world and we are humans and we have a tendency or actually a need maybe to experience all the gamut of emotions. I work with so many grieving people, as I know you do too. When I talk to grieving people, I always tell them you have to grieve. You can't just try to go live above it, or it's going to kind of come back and bite you in the butt later on. So, what do you say? Because I know you understand frequency and all that good stuff. When someone is in grief, what would you say to them?
Well, as I'm talking to someone, and you're absolutely right, grief is really important, I'm assessing energetically whether their grief is authentic or mind made. So, mind made emotions are not authentic. They're strong, they're very forceful, they feel extremely real, but the mind cannot feel. It doesn't have emotions. It's a beautiful tool. The third eye sits in the brain and wants it to be quiet so the third eye can work, because I think intuition is 100 times more effective than even logic. But we do need our logical mind, especially when you're putting IKEA furniture together. You got to make sure you use all the screws, right? So that's the first thing I'm assessing. If someone's in authentic grief, there's a sweetness to it. There's this beauty to it. And it's like your energy system, your body gives you breaks, like little breaks, where all of a sudden the dew on the grass looks like heaven, and the way your dog wags its tail just fills you up with such delight. And then you can go back to that deep, powerful, highly necessary, very transformational grief. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing I do.
And I think you're describing what I would call open-heartedness. When we're not, there's a difference between when we block our heart and we're just angry, and blameful versus when our heart is open and we're feeling that pain, but we're just sort of willing to experience it for the journey and then lift up. I don't know. What do you say?
Well, I agree. It just feels delicious. I also think it's partially a second chakra experience because the emotions are connected to the second chakra because they're connected through the second layer of the auric field. And so some people take their grief because it is subjective. It could take an entire lifetime to work through someone's grief, right? Or less. Um, so I'm looking at, are they in their emotional aspect of it? Because some people will stay in their grief for years and years and years, and it's mostly anger,
Mhm.
which is not grief.
Yeah.
Maybe an aspect of it, but it's not the real aspect of grief. And so I teach clients how to get into their emotional response system so that they can feel what they're really feeling, so that they can get into grief if they need to, so that they can get out of something that they've actually already resolved. From my perspective. So that's how, but you're right. I've had a moment of grief. It was pretty intense. It had nothing to do with someone passing away. It was an argument I had with my oldest daughter the day before her wedding. And,
That
and
happens.
grief happens in many ways, and it just
Right.
broke my heart. And I cried for months, and I learned a lot. I needed to set boundaries and
Mhm.
tell people how I felt, and not wait to the last moment on certain things. And
Yeah.
we actually were friends through the entire event, and are even closer now. But yeah, it was powerful.
So you talked about grief in the second chakra. For people listening who don't understand what that means, how would you describe that?
Well, there's this beautiful chakra right around the belly button. It's meant to be orange in color. Its highest emotional component is joy. So every chakra has joy within it. The heart chakra is about neutrality, it likes to be neutral. So the second chakra also governs things like intimate partnership, close personal friends, creativity, wealth, and career. It's the only chakra that governs like human needs and desires in that way. But it has a great friendship with the second layer of the auric field, which is often referred to as the emotional response system. So if people start to rest in their pelvis or anywhere from the hips down to their toes and even get curious about, like, what am I really feeling right now? They're going to get clarity about their emotional experience, their authentic emotional experience. They might find out that they are actually really sad and they do need to nurture themselves and take a bubble bath and cry on the couch for a few hours. Or they may discover that they're actually really happy, which is over 90% of the people I've seen over the years tend to think that and I see people for all kinds of reasons, that they're depressed or they're highly anxious, that they don't feel happy. And then when I teach them how to rest in the lower half of their body, and I don't guide, I mean, I just sit there, right? But I'm watching. And they're shocked and surprised that this emotional response system is giving them a very different set of information versus what their mind has been telling them.
That's
And they're
great.
usually happy.
You also talk about the authentic light vibration of the fourth chakra and how it relates to health for healers and intuitives and the human race at large. I think we need to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, I was before I started my business, I went to a Carolyn Mace and Dr. Sheely conference in Iowa, I think, Springfield somewhere. It was years ago, like 1998 or 97. And she was warning individuals who work in the healing world that cardiac issues are a primary problem for healers. And my guides had already talked to me about this, and they had asked me actually to leave my heart chakra alone, that I needed to be in neutrality. And because I worked as a nurse and we're doing procedures on people, that I had learned to kind of step away from my heart chakra, and so I could be fully present with the patient and maybe take them through a meditation if they were getting a spinal tap or something of that nature. And so what my guides had taught me is that, especially empathic people, which you attract old soul people are attracted to the healing world and mediumship and listen to podcasts like yours. And old soul people already have a perfectly developed, delicious heart chakra. It fills their entire chest cavity. But older souls come to earth collectively to learn self compassion. And so when they're overly empathetic, because they already have this down, they already care. It's not in debate. They're natural, loving, compassionate creatures. Even if they think they're not, they are. Even if they're not helping someone, their energy is. It's out there working, trying to help the homeless or across the globe, trying to help others going through even more challenging times. So, if we can learn to, you can rest in your heart chakra if you have gained the insight and the awareness of neutrality. But if you haven't, you might want to take a couple years and rest in other energy centers, because this will allow you to show up in the world more fully connected to your magnificence and allow you to channel and connect and be more of your authentic self versus being hit over so easily by the pain and the suffering of others. And when we aren't in neutrality, it could, doesn't mean it will, potentially weaken anything in the chest cavity, from breast tissue to heart muscle to the thymus gland to the upper back, just anything, the lungs in this area.
So, how does all this help all of us who are feeling the incredible energy of the world today? It sounds like what you're saying, we all need to be in the fourth chakra or in that neutrality just to cope with everyday life. What would you say about that?
I think it's important. I know you already know all this. That to realize that whatever's happening, it's actually in our best interest, even though it makes no sense and none of us would want anything that's happening, that we don't want to have happening, like wars. And, we don't want that. None of us do, that are listening to this podcast or think it's appropriate or in the best interest. But I do believe the universe is quite powerful, and we come to Earth to gain consciousness and understanding. And the Earth is inhabited by many different soul age beings, younger souls, medium souls, older souls, and we all learn differently. And younger souls are wanting to crack open their heart chakra to feel compassion. And compassion, when you're expanding the heart chakra, which is a really powerful, amazing experience for a younger soul. It's so profound. That's why they come to Earth, to learn compassion. That unfortunately, witnessing events, experiencing them, or having loved ones experience it, or watching it across the street from you, cracks open that heart chakra. So if we can be in the place that all of our souls knew what we signed up for prior to coming to Earth, and that Earth is a beautiful, well-created reality for contractual experiences, whether they're personal or
I
collective.
love that term, contractual experiences. Everybody who's listening knows we're talking about the soul plan and the soul agreements that we make before we come in, and how we're in the midst of a crisis. We'll go, oh my God, why did I agree to this part of my life plan?
Right, it's true. I actually have a lot of family that lives in the Middle East. So I, understand from my marriage that live in the Middle East, and my children are close to their cousins, and two of my children have traveled to that part of the world. So whoever we are and all of the connections that we have, because your mind might say, well, I don't know anybody over there, but that empathic ability is very strong and powerful and wonderful. But if it's neutral, and it doesn't mean that we don't make decisions like donate resources if we want to, or pray, or vote in ways that we think could help all of the world, we can still do all those things from our logical mind. If that inspires us, that's beautiful. I like to do Reiki on certain parts of the world when my energy is elevated, not when I'm crushed,
Right, right, right.
but when I'm like, oh, I feel great right now, I'm going to send energy over there and over there, and right. And so then you gain the knowingness of why things are happening. And you're right. The whole earth is being asked to grow collectively more consciously. All of us are being asked to, and it's happening.
And it's a big ask.
It is.
It's
I
a
agree.
big ask, but we are capable of it, and I tell my students all the time, you wouldn't be here on the planet right now if you hadn't agreed to be here for this shift and to be a part of it, and having conversations with you, Marie, and people like you. It's like we're all very aware of this. So if I were to, for example, say, well, gee, I need to talk to Marie because I need to fix my energy when I think about the world or deal with health problems or something, would you do private sessions? Tell me about the classes you teach. What kind of sessions do you do?
I don't do as many sessions as I used to. I'm in the same age category as you know, and so I have six
Oh
grandchildren
my
and
gosh.
a garden and a dog, but I love to teach. I see anywhere between 1 and 4 clients per week now. I haven't even opened up my 2027 schedule for 3 years, but I will be opening it soon. But if you write into us, because a lot of people had to wait a long time, we do get cancellations, and I do um, people with the serious of health issues we see first. And so there are opportunities for that. But I love to teach. And some students recently told me who were waiting a couple years to have an appointment with me said the classes help them enormously with their body. So I teach about 3 times a week and live courses on my network and the Shift Network and other places.
Hmm.
And I love it. It's really fun. And I teach people how to heal themselves and how to grow consciously, how to become a medium if that's something they want, or how to communicate with their loved ones. Because it's one
Hmm.
of my favorite things in the world is communicating to departed loved ones.
I love this. And you and I are blessed because we're part of a new class humanities team is putting together about helping grieving people. And you and I are both the teachers, and there's other amazing teachers in the class. I love what you say about loving to teach now because in my journey too, I'm seeing half as many clients as I used to see, but I'm loving my classes, and it's the same as you, people say, when I take your classes, I'm gaining so much healing and insight. I think teachers like us, Marie, because we are so aware of vibration and frequency and we're getting older, I think teaching is such a great way to just be able to empower so many people. So, what's an example of a class you have coming up that somebody might be able to register for?
I'm teaching 2 classes currently, and then I typically don't teach in the summer. So I won't be, but I am doing a retreat in Canada on
Oh,
awakening and helping people to a week-long retreat about awakening to their magnificence. So
wow.
I will be doing that. You can find that on the website. I'm currently teaching a professional class on entrepreneurship, about how to build your business.
Mhm.
And then I'm also teaching a class on energy healing. They're both 8 weeks. And even though I teach them live, they are recorded. And, we give those to people so you can join whenever you want.
And
Yeah.
what's the name of your website again?
Energyintuitive.com, or you can use mariemanuchehri.com. It's kind of hard to spell my last name. So, and then I do a podcast and we do live. People can ask me questions live.
Wow.
So I do that every 2 weeks. And so you can find out the information. I will be recording tomorrow live. So you can, every other Fridays when I do it.
Well, I can't tell you what a joy it has been to be with you again. And I know I'm going to get to be on your podcast soon, and that'll be
I'm
so
excited. I
fun.
have your book right here, right next to me. And I can't wait to
Aw.
interview you about your book. And I'm jealous. I wish I had 22s and 33s, but I don't. But I can't wait to hear all about it. It's
Well,
going to
I can't wait to hear about your path. We haven't talked about that today, but
be
when I'm on your show, I'll be talking about your birth path. You'll have to give me your date of birth.
course. Of course, I'll give you everything.
All right, sweetheart. It has been so great. And again, Marie's website is energyintuitive.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. And she is the healer for our needs in today's world. She understands your energy. She understands how to cope in this world the way it's so intense these days. And she understands how to work with emotional and physical illness and also connect to your departed. It's everything. So it's an honor to know you, Marie Manuchehri. And my name is Sue Frederick, and my website is suefrederick.com. And we are so grateful to have brought this podcast to everyone. So thank you all so much. And good night until we meet again.